G'day. So, the last Lotus Eaters podcast, they complained about how education is so poor in the modern day. Yeah, and they're not wrong that education these days sucks really, really bad, but it's not really all that bad. It's actually quite easy to learn a lot of this stuff. Now, I'm not going to go into the mathematics stuff that they're complaining about right here, like, what does it say here? A wedge of gold weighing 14 pounds, 3 ounces, and 8 DWT is valued at 504 L4S or whatever. What is the value of an ounce? Because that's not really something that a kid these days, if they know ratios, can do that. It's just a matter of knowing what the units are. So it's not really a big problem. But the questions raised about English grammar and analysis and composition, yeah, those are pretty significant, and it's actually not that complicated when you understand, it's not that complicated if you actually give shit about language. And so I'm going to answer some of the questions that are actually here.
And go to the English grammar, analysis, and composition ones, right? Mention some connective words which are not conjunctions. I have no idea.
Okay, so connective words, they're quite literally what they sound like. They're words that are used to connect phrases and nouns, or verbs even. So the conjunctions, well, they're really easy. They're and, or, and but. Literally, those are the conjunctions. And you use those to say that they're basically like logical comparisons. So, like, for example, Carl and academic agent are on the screen. So Carl and academic, you use them to form a group or to describe a group. But these conjunctions can also be used to connect sentences. So, for example, Carl is wearing a suit and Carl is on the Lotus Eaters. And is the conjunction. So, mention some connective words which are not conjunctions. So, well, example, there's a connective word right there, which. So, some connective words which are not. That's actually a connective word, but better connective words would be because, therefore, so, then, right? Because what these connective words do is link the sentences, but they're not joining the sentences together, right? They're connecting them in some kind of conditional way, but they're not linking them together. So let's move to the next one.
It's tricky that. Okay. Yeah.
Is the definition usually given of the relative pronoun applicable to any other pronouns? What is the distinctive characteristic of the relative pronoun? What? I don't know.
Okay, so the first part of the question, that would actually be a sort of a syllabus-related issue, so I wouldn't even be able to answer that because it would depend on the syllabus that this examination question was answering, and then it'd usually be something like you would Hermione Granger it. You just learn, this is the definition of the relative pronoun, and then you would decide whether or not it's applicable to the other pronouns. Now, we're not talking about the Zer stuff of these days. It's actually... so, there's a number of different kinds of pronouns. Like, there's the personal pronouns. I, we, you, me, they. Right? And they define a person, and they're distinguished between persons. So first person nominative is I. First person accusative is me. Second person pronoun is you. Then the third person pronouns are she, he, they. And it's basically just gradations of how far away the speaker is or how relevant they are to the conversation at hand. Then there's the interrogative pronouns, and these are the pronouns you use when you're asking a question, and these are the ones that you know about in journalism. Who, what, when, where, why, how. Then there are the demonstrative pronouns, which is this or that. So, this cup, or that tie, but you know what I mean. And like the personal pronouns, they're graded based on proximity to the speaker. This being close and that being there. Then there are the qualifying pronouns. So here, there, now, those kinds of things. And they are used to express like proximity or location in time. So then, as in the past. And another way of saying then is used to say the future as well. But relative pronouns, they're similar to conjunctions. They're used to join sentences. It's actually a way of saying subordination, where you take one sentence and you subordinate it. That is, you make it the sentence, or you make it an argument or an object in another sentence. So, for example, Carl is wearing a tie. The tie is green. So, you've got two sentences there. You can subordinate one to the other using a relative pronoun. So, the tile that Carl is wearing is green. Or, or another way of doing, you do the other way. The green tie that Carl is wearing. In this case, that is a relative pronoun because it is relativizing one sentence with respect to the other. And that's the distinctive characteristic of relative pronouns, is that they are used to subordinate one clause to another. That is, they're used to identify the relationship of one sentence to another, which we see right there, mention some connective words which are not conjunctions. Right? That is another relative pronoun, which specifically relates to things. So, for example, if you're like what he's saying, some connective words, that's one thing. Then you say some connective words are not injunctions, are not conjunctions. Words are inanimate objects, so you would use which, but we could probably say mention some people who are not African. We use who as the relativizer, the relative pronoun, when we're talking about animate objects, people. For example, we'd probably use which or that if we're dealing with animals or plants, but when we're talking about humans, we use who. There's also indirect arguments. So in sentences, you've got your subject, you've got your object, you've got subject, verb, the object. So the subject is the actor of the verb, and the object is the receiver or the patient of the verb. And then you've got indirect arguments. So Carl did a podcast with a microphone. The microphone is the indirect object, and with indicates the relationship, the indirect relationship to the actor. So with is the instrumental case. Now, what if I said Carl did a podcast with a microphone? Then I say the microphone is black. How do I subordinate the first clause onto the second clause? Right? It's not that easy. It's actually quite easy to use regular relative pronouns when you're dealing with either the direct object or the actor of a sentence, but not when you're dealing with indirect objects. So that's why you need to use the case marker to indicate the relationship between the object in the indirect object in one sentence and its direct actor or direct object equivalent in the other sentence. So what you would say is the microphone with which Carl does the podcast is black. See what I mean?
I don't know what the answers to these questions are. And I'm 45 years old and deeply embarrassed by this. Define the degrees
Invent a couple of languages, dude, then you'll be able to answer these questions.
Of comparison of adjectives. Give a list of adjectives which have irregular forms for the comparative and superlative degrees.
This isn't actually that complicated. So, comparison of adjectives. So, brighter. This light is brighter than that light. That's a comparative. So there's 3 degrees, right? There's the positive degree, which is you're basically just stating something. So, this is bright, right? You're not comparing at all. Then there's the comparative where you're saying this light is brighter than that light. Okay, and then we have the superlative, which is this light is brightest of all lights. You can make different comparisons. Like you could say lesser, like that light is less bright than this one. So give a list of adjectives which have irregular forms for the comparative and superlative degrees. So, well, the regular ones are ER. You put ER on for the comparative one. So brighter, shinier, greater, smaller, right? You put here. And then the superlative, the regular one, is EST, putting EST on. So mightiest, brightest, smallest, that kind of thing. But you're looking for irregular ones, and these are the ones where you will use more or most. So you wouldn't say contenter. So I am contenter than that person. No, you would say I am more content than that person. And I am the most content, right? So that's a list of adjectives which have irregular forms. And these tend to be the larger ones, and they tend to be borrowed from Latin. So a word that just popped into my head. So irregular, that's an example of an adjective. So you wouldn't say irregular, you'd say more irregular, or less regular, or most irregular, almost regular. Comparative, that is another adjective. Because you wouldn't say comparative, you would say more comparative, most superlative. There's actually, the question itself is its own answer. So it really just depends. The longer the word is, the less likely it is that it's going to have that ER or EST form, and the more likely it's going to have the more or most. And it tends to be borrowed words into English, at least in my experience, that have the irregular forms, whereas the regular ones, they tend to be the actual Anglo-Saxon words.
We need to bring the trivium back into classrooms. Right, we absolutely need to do this. We should never have let it leave. Why was it ever taken out? Is the question.
So my theory is feminized education system. Women tend not to be interested in these kinds of things. One, because it's inherently competitive, and women shy away from competition. Or rather, they try to equalize everything so that everyone gets a participation trophy, and then it becomes a race to the bottom. But also, it's not just that, it's more, you are best at teaching what you are interested in. And if the majority of our teachers are not interested in grammar and not interested in any of these technical things, then they'll just simply say, so totally boring, I can't teach it, don't know, don't care. And, well, quite frankly, when most of the teachers are women, most of the boys are going to think, don't know, don't care. I'll tell a recent story I had where I was sitting around, and there was this kid there, and he was getting frustrated. He was trying to play on his Switch, and he was trying to play this game, but he didn't have the game cartridge for it. It wasn't in there. And I was talking with the mother about it, but I was talking with the mother about something else, and I just looked over and I said, hey kid, the reason you can't play the game is because you don't have the game cartridge. See the little open circle thing, the open square thing? It means that you're missing the game cartridge. You need to stick it in. Do you have it? And the kid says, oh no, I don't have it. I'm going to have to play something else. And so I just reached over and I swiped over and said, here's a game that's actually on the console, so play that. Played it. And the mother turned to me and she said, if I had done that, he'd have screamed at me. How did you do that? And my thoughts were immediately, maybe boys just instinctively respond well to male authority. And so what you need is a man teaching this stuff. You need a man just teaching boys because they'll respond to it and they'll do better. Yeah, it really isn't that hard to answer these questions, especially if you've got a lot of experience inventing languages. I was able to figure out answers to these pretty quickly. I had to really think about it for a bit, but if you want to learn these kinds of things, go and invent a language. And I can strongly recommend Mark Rosenfelder's Language Construction Kit and his second book, Advanced Language Construction, because those are really, really good resources if you want to get into linguistics. Anyway, I hope you liked that. The reason I did this is simply because in order to answer a lot of these questions, I wouldn't have been able to put it into a single video comment. So this is the larger video comment, and I hope you found it educational.